Hello, welcome back for another deck tech. I'm BBD here, and today I'm playing Esper Control against Ollie's 5-color ramp deck. And we get to play with some more Gate Crash cards, so I'm pretty excited about it. Don't have as many in this deck as I did with the Naya deck, but there's still a couple in here that I think will be pretty sweet, so I'm really excited to try them out, and hopefully they will perform well. So I'm going to talk about the deck, and the main thing Esper Control gets from the new set is Watery Grave and Godless Shrine. No longer do you have to play like Evolving Wilds and a pretty weak mana base. You now just get to play on-color Shocklands, which let all these come into play untapped pretty much always, and are going to make casting all your spells like very easy to do. So pretty excited about that. It's going to make this deck a lot smoother, a lot less clunky. And that's the main add from Gate Crash to this kind of deck. And one other sweet thing is now having Watergrave and Godless Shrine makes Liliana the Veil playable, because you're actually capable of casting her on turn 3 now. Before it was a big stretch to be able to cast her on turn 3. So cards like Liliana or like Vampire Nighthawk or the like are now reasonable inclusions in an Esper deck. So the main thing other than the Shocklands for the mana base is just 3 Nephalia Drown Yards, and I have a 4th in the sideboard, and this is going to be a primary win condition most of the time. It's rare that you're going to win with damage, although Obsidat is definitely capable of doing that. So, but this is basically the main win condition, is to control the board and then drown them out. We have a bunch of Planeswalkers here. I have 6 Planeswalkers. I have Jace Memory Adept, who goes with the milling theme. He's just a very quick finisher for that in that regard. A couple of Architected Thoughts, very good against aggressive decks to shrink their attacks, and just kind of helps fuel you in the mid game with cards. Tamio, very good against cards like Thragtusk, just very good at locking down single targets. And the combination of these 2 cards is pretty powerful. And then Liliana, I think, is pretty decent right now. At least going into Gate Crash, people are playing decks like the Hexproof deck. People aren't playing as much Lingering Souls. They're playing more cards like Lockstone Smiter that Liliana is good at making them sacrifice. Smiter can be a problem with her +1, but Liliana is still pretty solid, so I think she's going to be good here. And then 3 Obsidat, and this is my personal favorite card from the set. It may not be the most powerful card, but it's my personal favorite, and I think this guy's going to be awesome and constructed. So he is a 5/5 for 5. He drains your opponent for 2 when he comes into play. When he leaves, you can exile him during your end step and have him come back into play on your next turn with haste. And you get to drain him for 2 when he comes back. He attacks for 5. So if your opponent doesn't have a way to block him, you're doing 7 a turn to them and gaining 2 life, which is pretty huge. And he dodges all sorcery speed removal. He dodges all wrath effects. He dodges ultimate price. Almost all removal that people are playing right now, Obsidat is pretty immune to, so I'm really excited about him. I think he's going to be very good, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see him today. 1 Snapcaster Mage. I always like to play 1 in all my control decks, because there are times where you want to get like another card, and having Snapcaster Mage means like you're never without an out to a situation usually. Like even if you've played all your Dissipates and your opponent's playing a spell that's going to kill you, you can dig for a Snapcaster Mage. 4 Lingering Souls. I'm not sure how good this card's going to be, but it's kind of a solid threat against a control deck, and kind of a roadblock against an aggressive deck. For our removal spells, we have 4 Supreme Verdicts. Just basically Wrath of God. It's a great card against like all the aggressive decks and mid-range decks. I would not play a control deck without some sort of card like this in there. 2 Detention Spheres, like an all-purpose answer. It can also serve as a wrath effect sometimes against cards like Lingering Souls. And then 2 Ultimate Price, which is right now just the best instant speed spot removal spell. And hopefully, as we see more spoilers, something better will be printed, but for the time being, it's Ultimate Price. And then we have another new card, Dimir Charm. And I don't think Dimir Charm is going to be that big in Standard, but I think it does have some uses. And I'm hoping here we'll get to see some of it. It has 3 abilities that are all relevant against different kinds of decks and different points in the game. It's just a question of how powerful those effects are going to be. I'm not entirely sure about that yet, but the only way to find out is to play it. So I'm going to play the card in and see how it pans out for us. A couple of dissipates to catch some. You need these in your deck for like cards like Rakdos' Return or things like that. Like, it's just worth having these in your deck because you never know what kind of big spell is going to end the game. Even you may have complete control of the game and just lose to some spell. And then for card draw, we have 4 Think Twice and 4 Sphinx's Revelation. Sphinx's Revelation, just one of the best cards in the format, so I would not play less than 4 of those. But this is the main deck, and I'm going to talk a bit about the sideboard. Alright, so for the sideboard, I'm going to start out by talking about Evil Twin, which is a card you don't see a lot of, but I actually think this card's very good and very underplayed. Basically, you want this against like Thragtusk decks. You want to be able to copy the Thragtusk and then kill any Thragtusk they play from that point on. It's also good against like Huntmasters and the like. Just anytime your opponent is playing a bunch of value creatures, you want to play something like Evil Twin to gain the same amount of value they do, and then also be able to remove theirs from the game, from play. Sundering Growth is a good card to answer just a number of stuff like opposing Detention Spheres, Oblivion Rings, against Ollie today, probably Chromatic Lantern, any kind of Key Rune. There's a lot of cards that Sundering Growth hits. Intangible Virtue too, the Hexproof deck that plays all the enchantments. This card's pretty good in the format right now, and it's also possible we can get like a free Lingering Souls token out of the Populate, although that's not a frequent occurrence. Another Detention Sphere. This could possibly be an O-Ring for opposing Detention Spheres, but again, this is going to come in against decks that play cards like Geralf's Messenger or Falconwrath Aristocrat, or other control decks where you want to neutralize their planeswalkers. Nephalia Drown Yards for any of the control decks, you want to turbo mill them out. That's going to be your main way to beat them, and you just want to have access to the most Drown Yards you can. Another Liliana, again for control decks. Liliana is very good at like stripping their hand early in the game, and the threat of the ultimate is very powerful. They have to really respect that, and it's just like a turn 3 Liliana can be backbreaking if your opponent doesn't have an immediate answer for it. It's also good against a lot of decks where you need like an Edict effect, some decks that are playing like just a few big finishers, or decks that are playing cards like Geist of St. Traft. Terminus is another Wrath for aggressive decks, and because we have Think Twice and Sphinx's Revelation, it's also possible to cast this on our opponent's turn. Dissipate, Negate, and Dispel. Against a lot of decks, you just want to load up on counterspells. The Control Mirror for one. Some of like the ramp decks, even some of the mid-range decks, you want a couple more counterspells if they're not playing Cavern. So and I like to diversify the kinds of counters I have. Dissipate's the best, so I want 4 of them because it gets anything. But then I have a mixture of Negate and Dispel, and Dispel is like very good because it's like it costs 1 a lot of times. You want to tap out, but just leave 1 up. But Negate has a little bit added versatility in being able to hit Planeswalkers, and also sorceries. So that's why I have a 2-1 split here. And then the last card is Deathwind, which may be a little surprising, but this card is mainly for Falconwrath Aristocrat, which is otherwise a huge problem for the deck. And Deathwind gets around its indestructibility, and you could play something like Tragic Slip here, but I prefer Deathwind because it's more versatile, and without a lot of creatures of our own, we're not going to have a good way to trigger the Morbid ability. But what Deathwind does is it lets it be a relevant removal spell against other creatures without requiring the Morbid. So this is our sideboard here, and hopefully I'll be able to take this Esper control deck for a spin and see how it does.